Good evening, everybody, or good afternoon, or good morning, wherever you are. And welcome once again to Story Hour. I'm your host, Daniel Marcus. My fabulous co-host is Laura Blackwell. And I hope that you're all healthy and safe and taking care of yourselves and each other. I started Story Hour in a couple of months into 2000, very early in the throes of the pandemic. Laura joined me shortly thereafter, co-hosting this project. And the intention early on was just to create some community with some writer friends, have a place to go to every week, share our work, and just hang out and just feel okay about being with each other. And it has just grown so far beyond that initial modest expectation. It's just been phenomenal. Last week we had our 200th author through these virtual rooms, which is amazing. I want to thank all of you listening here in Zoom or on Facebook, all of the authors who have shared their work with us. This evening, we're especially happy to have Karl Dandenell and Effie Seiberg, both of whom are Story Hour repeat offenders. They've been here before, and we're really delighted to have them here again. The approach is very simple. We turn to maybe the oldest form of entertainment in human history, which is folks sitting around the fire telling lies. And so every week we have two authors doing exactly that. So I'm very happy to announce, before we go any further, that for 2023, we received a SIFWA Givers Grant so that we can basically keep the lights on and keep the virtual rooms open and continue to bring you what we really feel is some of the best in spoken word speculative fiction you can get anywhere these days. Before we go on to the author's recommendations for good causes, we'd like to just call your attention to how you can support the folks impacted by the SAG-AFTRA strike. Just the
Daniel,
last few days,
Daniel,
almost been
good news.
what?
They
Oh,
actually
really?
arrived at a settlement.
No
So I'm
way.
just
I
hoping
was I
it's
was
fair to them.
looking this afternoon. I was looking this
Uh,
afternoon and they hadn't gotten there yet.
okay,
For
maybe
at
I'm
least
wrong. Maybe I need to go hang out with my buddy Miss Google for a bit. Maybe you should just go ahead and do your spiel. No, am I right, Effie?
yeah.
Yay!
Oh, that's fantastic.
I know. Such a relief
Well, I
after
was
all
going
the
to talk
drama.
about the Entertainment Community Fund, entertainmentcommunity.org. Hopefully this won't be needed, but check them out anyway. They provide a broad spectrum of programs and support groups and workshops, and particularly emergency financial assistance for folks who work in the performing arts and entertainment. So they're still out there, still a great organization, even though I'm really happy to hear that the SAG-AFTRA strike may indeed be resolved. It's wonderful. Um, so Karl is reading tonight for Planned Parenthood. As we all know, Planned Parenthood is one of the nation's leading providers of high quality, affordable health care for women, men, young people, and it's really the nation's largest provider of sex education. Quality health care backed by medical experts, abortion, STDs, pregnancy, contraception, sexual orientation, gender identity, and more. Tons of resources, really an essential organization, PlannedParenthood.org. Effie is reading tonight for another truly essential organization, the World Central Kitchen. WCK is basically first in the front lines, providing meals in response to humanitarian, climate, and community crises. They believe, as do we at Story Hour, that food is a universal human right. And they've created a new model for disaster relief or helping devastated communities recover. So that's WCK.org. So please check out both of those organizations. If you're in a position to help financially, that's great. Please do so. If you're not, that's also totally fine. Just be aware these folks are out there doing great work to try and make your world better. So on with the show. We're going to start with Effie. Effie Seiberg is a fantasy and science fiction writer. Her stories can be found in the Women Destroy Science Fiction special edition of Lightspeed magazine. Highly recommended. Winner of the 2015 British Fantasy Award for Best Anthology. She's also been in the Best of Galaxy's Edge, Analog, Fantasy Magazine, and Podcastle, among many others. Her stories include a finalist in the Ann Lab Awards and an honorable mention in the year's Best YA Speculative Fiction. Effie lives in the San Francisco Bay Area, where she likes to make sculpted cakes and bad puns. And you can read more of her work at effieseiberg.com and find her online at effies.bsky.social and Blue Sky, or FES at wandering.shop on Mastodon. So Effie, take it away. Welcome back. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much for having me back. It's always an honor to be on Story Hour. Today I've got a short story for you guys. This is called Worrywart, and it was originally published in Galaxy's Edge at some point last year. I can't remember, but that's okay. Here we go. Fairy gifts are great if they come from a smart fairy. A smart fairy knows not to deal in too many abstracts without defining them. But my fairy godfather, Morningflower, gifted me with being able to confront my biggest problems head on, which meant that instead of having a baseline level of anxiety neatly tucked into my head, I had Bub. Bub was my anxiety. He looked like a navy blue goblin and was the size of a big watermelon. Not that he was visible to anyone else, but I'd been able to see him since the age of 8, and he hadn't left my side since. And today, he was cranky. No respect, he grumped. None. The nerve of that guy. Calm down, I said. My horse half tripped on a rock in the path and jolted us, but kept going through the autumn breeze. He couldn't see you, and he was trying to be helpful. Bub was behind me in his stiff leather basket attached to the side of my saddle, arms crossed in his huff. He loaded 5 dead chickens onto my head. This is on you, really. You could have told him I was there. Not if I want any more monster-killing business. Besides, they're in the other bag now, so you're fine. We'd had this fight so many times before. Who's going to hire a freelance adventurer if they're known to have anxiety? I think you're scared. You're scared of being scared, you big wuss. Just you wait. It'll be a self-reinforcing cycle of fear, and you'll be stuck cowering under a tree somewhere, too scared to keep going. Sure, whatever. He was sticking his tongue out, so I made a point of looking back and rolling my eyes. But what if he was right? What if he was a big wuss? What if I were a big wuss? Today's assignment was a hydra. I hated hydras, but I was ready, hopefully. I had my sword at my side, my big axe strapped to my back, a short dagger on my left leg, and a knife in my right boot. Making sure to keep my horse steady, I felt around behind me for the saddlebag that didn't have Bub, and fished beneath the dead chickens until I could touch the box for my poisoned-tipped crossbow bolts. The crossbow case was just within reach behind the bag. Checklist complete, and checklists always helped with Bub around. The plan was simple. 1, lure out the hydra with the chickens. 2, shoot it a lot with the poison-tipped bolts. Easy peasy. Unless I didn't get a good shot and had to defend myself close up. I should have dipped my sword in the poison when I had it, too. Ugh. You can't kill a hydra with a sword, just piss it off enough so maybe it thinks you're not worth the trouble. And hydras are so mean, they think everything's worth the trouble. You can't do it, said Bub. Of course I can do it, I said, not believing a word that came out of my mouth. I hated how persuasive Bub was, but I'd spent lots of time working on my crossbow marksmanship before I even took the gig. I'd also spent lots of time working on not listening to Bub, but that skill was not as far along. You're gonna fail. What if I failed? A painfully terrible, protracted death. Hydras like to play with their food, like a bored cat with a slow mouse. And if I survived, deep humiliation when I came back empty-handed to the town that hired me. And my reputation would be ruined, and I'd never get work again, and I'd starve to death, which honestly sounded a lot worse than being a Hydra chew toy. You're gonna fail, you can't do it, you aren't ready, you'll never work again. Bub's taunting sing-song was as familiar as the back of my hand. Now, look at this. And now, thanks to Bub, I pictured myself in front of the Hydra, all of its heads staring at me. A cluster of red mouths glistened with spit and venom, green scales splitting into evil grins. The heads surrounded me and started biting, one small bloody chunk of me gone each time. And I flailed with my sword and axe, but they bounced right off the monster's skin. The ground was littered with useless crossbow bolts, blue-stained with the poison that failed to get into the Hydra every time I missed a shot. Of course I'd missed, and I couldn't run because in this imaginary scenario, I was backed up to the edge of a cliff, death whether I went forward or back. I was helpless and too scared to do anything, too paralyzed by fear to even pick up a dropped bolt and stab in the poison directly. I could feel myself starting to sweat, my heart racing and trying to smash its way out my ribcage. What if this was it? Why did I think I was capable of killing a Hydra, of all things? I barely escaped the last one. My hands were sweaty on the horse's reins, and the dripping mouths full of awful needle teeth filled my inner eye again, and I started to hyperventilate. I wiped my hands on my brown woolen tunic and shook my head, trying to clear out the mental image. It didn't work. Utter failure. That's what you are, said Bub. I turned around in the saddle as far as I could and swiped at him. It felt like slapping fog, ineffective and not that good at getting out frustration, and definitely not that good at shutting him up. Why did you ever think you could do this? Smug bastard. I imagined ditching him, flinging him out of a trebuchet, boiling him in oil, but none of that made my current panic any easier and the mental image of venomous Hydra mouths any fainter. Besides, none of those ideas were going to work. I counted my breath in for 1, 2, 3, and then counted my breath out for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Gripped the pommel of my saddle and focused on the sensation in my hands, and then repeated the exercise 9 more times until I felt a bit calmer. You can't do it, Bub whispered, and something itched in the back of my mind. I was forgetting something. Wait a minute. Wait just a God's cursed snake-spitting minute. I eased the horse to a stop and hopped off, rummaged through the saddlebag to pull out the wooden box of bolts. The iron latch was already open, and inside, nothing but the burlap lining. No bolts at all. And now I could picture the bolts on the shopkeeper's table right where I put them after she dipped them all in poison for me, and right where I left them when I ran out to deal with the commotion of Bub yelling at the assistant for boring dead chickens on his head, and the assistant not understanding why the chickens weren't going into the saddle compartment at all, even though it was clearly empty, and then the assistant dumping them on Bub's head all over again. And then I'd put the chickens on top of the bolt case in the other bag and forgot about everything. I hated when Bub was right. It didn't happen often, but whenever it did, he'd use it as ammunition from there on in to make me doubt myself even more. I put the case back in the saddlebag, this time on top of the chickens, got on the horse, and turned us back onto the path. Two hours later, now properly armed with poison-tipped bolts, I used my checklist twice as we were leaving the shop to make sure I hadn't forgotten anything. Bub and I approached the Hydra's lair. I armed myself with all my weapons, double-checked and triple-checked my leather armor and steel helmet were buckled on tight, and then hid myself behind a tree. The mouth of the Hydra's cave was right where the town leaders had said it would be, on the other side of a grassy clearing. The rocks nearby were tinged with blood spatters, and I could see what had to be a couple of cow femurs littered about. The wait for a deadly creature to come out was always the worst part. It's where Bub went wild with terrible scenarios. But before I could preemptively tell him to shut up, a noise sounding like footsteps on gravel came out of the cave. A moment later, out stepped the tiniest hydra I'd ever seen. It couldn't have been much taller than Bub, and was even the same deep blue color. 9 stubby necks erupted from its shoulders, and 9 cranky heads sat atop them. This was going to be easy for once? Bub smirked. Look at you. Even a tiny hydra like this one, and you're going to fail. Something itched at the back of my mind again, but I ignored it and loaded up the crossbow. You forgot your poison bolts before. What else are you forgetting? Look at all this bare, vulnerable flesh you've got showing. Bet you forgot some armor. I patted myself all around, checked the armor, checked the buckles. Looked good. Shut up, Bub. You're gonna fail anyway. Before you know it, you'll be shaking like a leaf and your shot will go wide. And you'll end up dead, and not even from something big and scary, from this piddly little thing. Shut up, I said under my breath. I imagined a stone wall going up all around Bub, sealing him away, and then brought up my crossbow again. I aimed at the creature, breathed out to steady myself, and fired. The shot hit right in the middle of the squat creature's chest and went right through as though the beast were made of smoke. What the hell? Bub was right. I couldn't fight back, and this thing was going to get me, and I was going to die a horrible death from this tiny thing right now. Hey, whoever you are, that was rude and unnecessary, bellowed the creature. Calm down, said a deeper voice from within the cave, and out came another hydra. Easily 12 feet tall, 9 elegant long necks shining in scales of teal and green and turquoise, and, now that I thought about it, looking a whole lot more likely to be the right size for all those cow femurs to make sense. Ugh. Remember, people can't see you, said head number 3, or animals, said head 7. Somebody shot me! So rude! This is why you don't have any friends. You don't take care of the people around you, said the mini hydra. This guy's awesome, shouted Bub from behind me. Who said that? The mini hydra started to stomp over in our direction across the clearing. Wait, you can hear me? Said Bub. Wait, you can hear him? Said Big Hydra heads 1, 4, and 8 in unison. Bub stomped out from behind the tree towards the mini hydra before I could do anything about it. So much for my element of surprise. The two met midway across, and other than the number of heads, they looked weirdly similar. In fact, the mini hydra walked on the tips of the grass, just like Bub, like they were both equally weightless, and the stalks felt no need to bend underneath them. I reloaded my crossbow, hands shaking. Bub got me into enough problems as it was, but if he was going to sick 2 different hydras on me, there's no way I could get out of this alive even with poison bolts. But I should still try, right? I mean, even worse to go out without fighting. The 2 blue creatures talked quietly together for a moment while both the big hydra and I waited on opposite sides of the clearing. I was still behind the tree, and maybe it hadn't seen me yet and maybe it thought Bub was the only one around? But why could it see Bub? I aimed again, but the monster paced back and forth, giant as it was, and my shaking hands made it hard for me to get a good shot. Bub turned back to where I was and yelled, "Hey, I like this guy," while the mini hydra turned to its bigger counterpart and said, "This one's okay. He's also got a scaredy cat loser." I kept my crossbow up. Great. Now the big hydra definitely knew where I was. Yeah, Bub waved me over. We're brothers. The big hydra caught my eye with all 9 of its heads at once, just like I'd imagined. No. So, asked head 3, does that mean you have Morning Flower as your fairy godfather too? My jaw dropped, and things came together really, really fast. This Hydra also had anxiety. I inched out from behind a tree, took a gamble, and dropped my crossbow just enough to show that I wasn't aiming directly at the monster. Yeah, he sucks, huh? Heads 1, 4, and 8 broke out in laughter. Oh, he totally does. Did you get that nonsense about facing things head on, too? Yeah, it's the worst, I yelled back. How do you manage it? Poorly, said head 3. I don't know. Some days I don't manage it at all. It's really hard. He's always harping on all of my worst fears. It's even worse when he's right, I said, and I let my crossbow arm drop and walked towards the middle of the clearing. He never lets me forget it. I know, said head 7. And the Hydra slowly moved towards the center of the clearing, too. Like, Gug's always saying I'm gonna get killed by some tiny skinny wuss of an adventurer. Wait. All 18 eyes locked on my crossbow. Were you gonna... Heads 1, 4, and 8 trailed off. I felt sheepish. I mean, yeah, until I met you. You seem cool, though. I'd rather we didn't kill each other. You're gonna wuss out already? Bub smirked. See, I told you you'd fail. Time to starve and die a failure. It's a lie! Hydra Gug turned to the big Hydra. And you're stupid enough to fall for it because you're too desperate to make a friend. You'll get killed, and it'll be all your fault, and you'll die lonely and friendless and gullible. I tensed a bit. It's hard not to believe what anxiety tells you, but I took a deep breath and placed my crossbow on the grass, then stood up and held out my empty hands. Actually, I never met anyone else with anxiety before, and I'd love to get to know you better. It'd be nice to have the company. All 9 heads grinned and said, "Shut up, Gug," to the 9-headed anxiety goblin, then turned back to me. I'm Slee, said head 7. Come on in. I've got a sheep I was about to roast on the fire and a cask of wine I swiped. Several hours later, I was back on my way to the village. The sun was starting to set, and a cool breeze whipped dead leaves around my horse's hooves. Bub was in his usual saddle compartment, and the other compartment now held a sheep heart. Strapped to the back of the saddle was a Hydra head and neck, which I hadn't known were replaced regularly. Turns out you can tell a Hydra's age by how many heads they have. Slee was 90. You're gonna fail, said Bub. People are gonna see right through this con. They'll kill you for trying to trick them out of their money. No, they won't, I said. They have no idea what a Hydra heart looks like, and Slee's going to be more careful with livestock from this village. Besides, it's the next village that's going to have a Hydra problem. You're not going to get away with this multiple times. You can't just go village by village causing and solving a Hydra problem. You're too stupid to get it right. You'll get caught, and then you're going to fail. Maybe, maybe not, I said. Seems like a pretty good partnership to me. I tried to focus on the present, which Slee told me they'd found helpful. Right now, things were good. Right now, I had a new friend, and we could share stories and meals and coping mechanisms together without judgment. Right now, it looked like Bub was a teeny bit fuzzy around the edges and maybe talked a teeny bit softer. It was almost like having someone to share the experience with made managing Bub a little easier. I didn't expect him to ever go away completely, but it was nice finding a friend to share the burden. I hummed a little tune. You're off key. Shut up, Bub, I said, and smiled. Thank you so much, and I'll pass it along back to Dan.
Thank you so much. That was just super fun. I couldn't stop smiling. What a great story. Typically, between authors, we just kind of have a moment to collect ourselves and to let the work sort of resonate and do whatever it's going to do within us, and then we move on to the next. We're just going to kind of pause for a moment, take a breath, and then we'll continue. Effie Seiberg, folks, thank you so much. Our next author is another Story Hour repeat offender, Karl Dandenell. Is a graduate of the Viable Paradise Writers Workshop, a SIFWA member, and his short fiction has appeared in numerous magazines, websites, and podcasts in the US and Canada and in England. Karl and his family, plus their feline overlords, dwell on an island near San Francisco, well known for its Victorian architecture and low-speed traffic. I know what that is, but I'm just not going to say. Karl's preferred drinks are strong Swedish tea and single malt whiskey. To learn more about his writing and cats, visit his website. That's www.firewombats.com, or follow him on Twitter at @KDandenell. Karl, welcome back. The floor is yours.
Thanks so much. Effie, that was a fabulous story, and I think I need to just have you read all my stories from now on because you're so good at it. So I'm going to read from the anthology of the Science Fiction Tarot, which was a Kickstarter project that I was part of. They wanted to take the tropes of science fiction and turn them into the different arcana. And so I pulled the alien invasion card. So my story is the Schadenfreude.
Karl, I'm so sorry. At least I've lost a video on it. There you are. Never mind.
Good. All right. Let's start again. Yeah. So I'll be reading from the Schadenfreude. when the little alien, accompanied by two heavily armed soldiers, walked into my office, I had to admit I was surprised. Normally, my clients ran to the more mundane. Immigrant restaurant workers cheated out of their wages and the like. A Schadenfreude, well, that was a different thing altogether. We're looking for Benjamin Goldstein, the lawyer, said the first soldier. I straightened my tie, wishing I'd worn my suit without the frayed cuffs. That's me. How can I help you? I'm Sergeant Pearson, part of the extraterrestrial security detail in San Francisco. He stepped back and gestured to the alien, who climbed into the chair opposite me. Hand to God, it looked like Yoda's kid brother, fuzzy and green and wrinkled. The alien tapped the translator cuff at his wrist. Greetings, advocate. My name is Pol Pot. I suppressed a shudder. Pleased to meet you. I'd heard that Schadenfreuders pick random names out of Wikipedia for themselves, but it still gave me the willies. However, Mrs. Goldstein raised a polite boy, so I asked him nicely, what can I do for you, Mr. Pot? I wish to procure your services. You work with legally challenged non-citizens. I specialize in services for immigrants, if that's what you mean. Yes. There was an awkward moment. Did he mean, yes, I agree with your statement, or yes, let's get on with it? I opted for the second course. All right then, Mr. Pot, if you're looking for citizenship, I'm sure I can help you out. Alien or not, client was a client. It had been a slow month. I was behind on my student loan payments. Again. No. Excuse me? You misunderstand, advocate. I have no desire to become a citizen. While your planet is interesting, I wouldn't make my nest here. He flicked his ears like a cat. I need contracts with your clients. I leaned back. What sort of contracts? I wish to purchase their suffering, Pol said. Then he gave his best approximation of a human smile, slightly hampered by his lack of teeth. When the aliens revealed themselves last year, their shuttles landed in areas beset by natural disasters or political upheaval. They also seem attracted to prisons, political rallies, and orphanages. There were numerous sightings at the DMV. When the scientists asked the aliens what they called themselves, the representative, Jim Jones, replied, "We don't use a single word to describe ourselves like Masons or libertarians. We prefer the phrase, those who enjoy the suffering of others." The term Schadenfreuders appeared on social media and it stuck. Let me see if I've got this straight, I said. You want to help my clients by taking away their suffering? No. Again, you are mistaken. Paul sounded just like my booby Esther with a bad head cold. My people are not interested in alleviating the suffering of humans. We simply wish to procure a legal and fair trade source of discomfort. Among my kind, he continued, I'm known as an appreciation specialist, much like the hedonists of your ancient Greece. Wrong ancestors, but I catch your drift. I closed the jdate.com browser tab and pulled up a contract template for professional services. What are you looking for in particular? Today, I would like to experience disappointment, something strong and piquant. Paul leaned forward, folding his disturbingly long fingers together. I might have a client for you. Do you know about political asylum? I have studied your legal codes. Your asylum process is rife for abuse. Got it in one, I said. Well, I just received notice that Mrs. Lee had her petition denied. You could come with me when I deliver the news. Promising, said the alien. Now, as to your fee, standard commission is 15% of the contract, or we can do it for a flat rate based on my actual hours, I replied automatically. Whatever's cheaper, said Paul. We piled into the Army's Humvee and headed over to Chinatown, flashing our lights all the way. Then we double parked by Mrs. Lee's store and cleared the sidewalk for Paul, who sauntered in, wide-eyed as any tourist. Mr. Goldstein, hello, said the matronly Chinese woman behind the counter. She looked at the soldiers, then the alien. Oh, what's this? That is Mr. Pot. He was busying himself with boxes of pungent herbs that lined the shelves. He's studying different human ethnic groups and is willing to pay for a few minutes of your time. That was the cover story we'd concocted. All you have to do is sign this, and I'll give you $200 in cash if you can hold your hand while you read the letter from Immigration Services. She looked at the contract, confusion and suspicion warring on her face. Is this about my petition? It is. And Mr. Pot wants to hold my hand. Why? I shrugged. Humans fascinate them. It's perfectly safe, as far as I knew. She looked at Paul. All right. Then she added in a whisper, he smells like burnt pot stickers. Agreed, I said, but it's $200 for something you were going to do anyway. I glanced at Paul, who'd produced a roll of 20s from a Mickey Mouse fanny pack. What do you say? I say 300, she said. That is unacceptable, said Paul. 220. 280, and I'll throw in that box of ginger root you've opened. 240. Done. Mrs. Lee said, wrote her name with a flourish on the contract. I nodded to Paul, who peeled off a dozen bills. Mrs. Lee added the money to the register. She held out her hand, shuddering a little when the alien touched her. May I have the letter now? Here you are. As she read, her forehead wrinkled in concentration. Then she closed her eyes and shook her head. They don't understand. I'm sure they don't, I said, looking at Paul. His little pointed ears stood at attention. A purr like several contented cats emerged from his midsection, and his eyes had changed from a dark blue to black with bright gold flecks. Very nice, he said. Good day, madam. He wobbled out of the shop, followed by his military babysitters. I turned to Mrs. Lee, who still held the letter. I'm happy to follow up with Immigration Services. There's always a chance we can renegotiate. She cut me off with a raised hand. Thank you, Mr. Goldstein, but I need some time to think. I joined Paul in the Humvee. He sat behind the driver, eyes closed, still purring. I addressed the other soldier, whose name tag read Simmons. So, what do we do now? Simmons, a thick-set man with pale blue eyes, glanced at the street. Wait a few minutes and keep our eyes open. Has there been any trouble? Not with this guy, Simmons replied. After that first press conference, though, the Secret Service caught a couple of nut jobs trying to plant a bomb on one of their shuttles. Not that that would have done any good. You wouldn't think to look at them, but these guys are tough. And yet you're here, I said. Just doing my job, sir. Paul opened his eyes. They were dark blue again. That was a pleasant start. Now we need something more complex. Where are you, sir? Asked the guard. Mission District, I replied, pulling out the next contract. Nice personal injury case. 15 minutes and 2 near accidents later, we pulled up to a graffiti-covered apartment building. Chips of auto glass littered the sidewalk, and more than the usual quota of homeless men and women camped in the doorways. Only one even made a half-hearted attempt at panhandling us, though. Spare change? Said a scruffy bearded kid, shaking an empty cup. Could use some coffee. Pole knelt down and inspected. Caffeine is contraindicated. You require water, proteins, and blood filtering. Just one coffee, dude. Pole dug around in his fanny pack and produced some quarters, which he dropped into the cup. As we ascended the stairs, Pole said, I might want to see that human later. We stopped at the apartment nearest the third floor landing. Carpeting was worn and stained, dead roaches littered one corner. I knocked loudly. The door was opened by a young, tired woman with long black hair streaked with gray. Hola, Senor Goldstein. Hola, Mrs. Sanchez. Is your husband home? Where else would he be? She snapped. And she looked past me at Pole and the soldier. What's happening? Those aren't ICE agents, Mrs. Sanchez. Mr. Pott has come from another world to meet your husband. That's hard to believe, she said. Please come in. She backed into the tiny kitchen. Simmons took up a position in one corner. The small apartment was spotless, filled with candles bearing stickers of the Virgin Mary. Family photos covered one wall, and an old flat TV screen hung in the other, filling the living room with the heated exchanges of Hector and Elizabeth, the popular couple on Amores Secreto. Pole sat on the couch. I love this show. I originally requested the Los Angeles shuttle so I might meet the actors. I'm sure that could be arranged, I said. Don't worry about it, replied the alien. As it turns out, television actors aren't appealing. Their emotional states tend to be muddled by ego and central nervous system depressions. Mr. Sanchez hobbled into the living room on a pair of crutches. Buenos dias. Javier. I shook his hand. Good to see you. How's the foot? He raised his left leg and wiggled the heavy cast, wincing. Still pretty bad. I wish you hadn't taken that roofing job, Mrs. Sanchez said. No one else was hiring. He sat down on the couch, carefully propping up his leg. Then he turned to Pole. You're one of the famous aliens. You look bigger on TV. Everything does. I'm Pol Pot. He pointed at Javier's foot. Are you in great pain? If I don't take my pills, are you medicated now? Not since yesterday, he replied. Madre de Dios, Mrs. Sanchez said. The doctor said you have to take the pills every 6 hours. They're too expensive. Obviously, you can't work like this, Paul said. How do you pay the bills? Sanchez glanced at the kitchen and lowered his voice. We can't. Mr. Goldstein's trying to get us some money, but that may take months. Denuncia, my wife, she's working extra hours at the restaurant. It's not enough, though. This will help, I said, pulling out the contract. Mr. Pott is studying human behavior, and he wants to interview you for a fee. Before you say anything more, though, you want to sign this. Why do I need to sign anything? My people require receipts for all expenses, said Paul. He'll pay $500, I said, cash. If it's a good story, added the alien. Denuncia appeared quickly. Simmons put a hand on his sidearm. Really, she said? $500? She turned to me. This isn't illegal, is it? Absolutely not, ma'am, I said. The contract will hold up in any court. I hoped. I missed a lot of contract law questions on my first 2 attempts at the bar. Well, what are you waiting for? She said to her husband. Sign it. I handed him a pen. He signed. Okay, what do you want to know? Take my hand and tell me how you came to this country, Paul said. Start at the beginning. Don't leave anything out. We stayed over an hour. At some point, the conversation switched over to Spanish since it was easier for Javier, and Paul had his translator. Sergeant Pearson relieved Simmons at the door. Denuncia offered us bowls of goat stew. I turned it down. Not a big fan. I was checking my email when Paul emitted a squeak and dropped Javier's hand. The alien's ears curled and uncurled rapidly, his fur puffed up, turning him into a giant green tumbleweed. His eyes screwed shut. Pearson stepped forward. I think we're done for here today. He poked Paul a few times, wrinkling his nose at the smell. Yep. He handed me Paul's fanny pack, and I gave $500 to Javier. Is he all right? He said, gripping the money. Buena historia, mumbled Paul. I gave Javier an extra 100. Pearson tapped his radio. Hey, Jim, Lord Kermit is curdled. We're coming down. Roger that, came the reply. He'll be fine. It's probably just their equivalent of jet lag, I said. Pearson shook his head. More like inebriation. As long as we get him back to the ship for some shut-eye, he'll be fine. With that, he grabbed the alien and slung him over his shoulder like a sack of flour. Good day, sir. Madam. When we reached the street, Paul opened an eye at the bearded kid and said, Dessert? Maybe later, I replied. Late the next afternoon, Paul appeared at my office while I was reviewing a deposition and waiting callbacks on 2 other cases. He had another alien in tow. Advocate, this is Eva Perron, our Minister of Trade. I'm pleased to meet you, ma'am. Greetings, said the other alien, who was smaller and slightly rounder than Paul. My shipmate has shared a memory analog with me, and I found it intriguing. Very different from our other advocates, more subtle shadings and ripeness of flavor. That's nice. If what Paul says is correct, you may fit my needs, she said. You will arrange a tasting now. I have a full schedule today, I said. How's tomorrow? Eva exchanged a burst of high-pitched squeaks with Paul. Then she said, this takes priority. If necessary, we will alter our compensation agreement. I'll need a retainer up front. Then, because I had just checked my bank balance, I named a figure 10 times my normal amount. I don't have that much currency, said Eva. We'll have to stop at the bank. I set aside the deposition. Let me print some contracts. The 3 of us piled into a black Chevy Suburban with 4 soldiers, including Pearson and Simmons. Where to, sir? Said Simmons. The 21 Club, Tenderloin. We pulled into traffic, flipped an illegal U-turn, and shot up 6th Street. Eva and Paul sat in their child car seats, carrying on rapid-fire chipmunk conversation. At one light, Eva pointed to some day laborers congregating nearby. Are those criminals? Not necessarily, I said. We note they demonstrate an aversion to police and soldiers. Ah, I suggested the men might lack visas and were worried about being deported. That particular anxiety could be most exquisite, she said. Perhaps the soldiers could threaten them. Not my job, ma'am, said Simmons. A few minutes later, we pulled up to the bar. Wait here a second. The inside was dark, a bit too warm, just as I remembered. Ghosts of old beer and cigarettes clung to the walls. Hey, Benjamin, how's my favorite shyster? Said the bartender, grinning woman in her 40s with bright pink hair. I winced. Do you have to call me that, Sally? Absolutely. What are you drinking? Mineral water. Always the wild man. She filled a glass and added a lime wedge. On the house. Thanks. A few years ago, I'd helped Sally out of a nasty divorce. Her husband had been busted for drugs out in the Palm Desert. Fortunately, he was now serving 15 years for intent to distribute. What brings you to the hood, she said. I glanced at the dozen patrons drinking and talking amongst themselves. Looking for some temporary help, I said. Finally decided to paint your office? I wished. No, I need some people who'd be willing to discuss their problems with some acquaintances. Off the record, of course. Oh, she raised an eyebrow. I told her about the Schadenfreuders and offered her a commission for helping out. Why not? Money's been a little tight. We could put some chairs into the storeroom. It's quiet enough if you don't mind the toilets flushing next door. She cocked her head towards a man with a scraggly beard and a substantial gut. Start with Bogus Jim. He's ordered his 3rd beer, which means he's ready to start bitching. She filled a fresh pint glass and took it over to Bogus Jim. I collected the aliens and their babysitters. When we walked in, one of the patrons dropped his whiskey glass and crossed himself. Bogus Jim stared at the aliens as I explained the deal. How much, he said. I flashed 3 fingers at Sally. 400, she said, and winked. Bring it on, Jim said. Sally led him to the back. The soldiers poked around before splitting up to cover the front door and the service entrance in the alley. Eva and Paul sat on either side of Jim. Sally set his beer and contract on an upturned crate. Thanks, honey, he said and scribbled his name. You want to hear about my son, Tommy? He's lost his 2nd job in a year and wants to move home. Absolutely, said Eva. I'm famished. Jim looked at me. You sure they understand English? Better than you, I think, Eva said. Could be, he said. I went to public school during the Reagan administration. He drained his beer and took the alien's hands. Sally and I returned to the bar. We talked to the other patrons, signing them up for a tasting. We found 2 ex-cons, a cancer patient, a veteran PTSD, a chronic gambler, and a former inner circle Scientologist. Bearing in mind Paul's indulgence yesterday, I drew up a schedule that limited the alien sessions to 15 minutes, with a break every hour. How often do they need to use the bathroom? Asked Sally. I don't even know if they use the bathroom, I answered. When I asked Sergeant Pearson, he shrugged. It's complicated. I handled contracts and payments. Sally poured drinks. After a while, she loaded the dishwasher under the bar and hung up her towel. This turning out to be a pretty good Tuesday. Glad I could help, I said, sucking a lime slice. Seems kind of weird, though. Having aliens in your bar? Nah, some of those kids from the hate make this seem downright normal. I'm talking about the whole slipping up human suffering thing. Her words didn't sit well. This from a woman who serves worms in her tequila. She laughed. They're not actual worms. Our conversation was interrupted by a lanky gas station attendant named Harry, who decided he didn't like Eva Peron's attitude and tried to drop kick her through a carton of paper towels. He was neatly intercepted by Sergeant Pearson, who pinned him faster than a cowboy taking down a calf at a rodeo. After we ejected Harry, I checked in with the Schadenfreuders. Are you all right, Miss Baron? Of course. My apologies for the inconvenience. I was not inconvenienced in the least, advocate. Thanks to the soldier, I was able to indulge your client's supreme frustration at failing to cause me injury. I would have paid him extra just for that. Her ears twitched and she exchanged squeaks with Pole. I think we can manage one more, then we must return. My shipmates have much to experience and consider. Apparently, I had passed some sort of interview after that. In addition to Eva Peron and Pol Pot, I began representing other aliens. Augusto Pinochet, Mobutu Sese Seko, Idi Amin Dada, and Nicolae Ceausescu, whom everyone called Nicky. I even hired a paralegal to handle my existing cases while I coordinated meetings between the aliens and my clients. The military was not comfortable with so many Schadenfreuders tromping through my office, so they moved the whole operation of the temporary alien consulate at the San Francisco Armory. They gave me a windowless room with a desk and a cot and access to the garrison showers. DoorDash and Uber Eats became my primary sources of nutrition. I saw one driver, Tai Tong, several times a week since he worked for both companies. I should be an employee, he said the third time he delivered an order from the Golden Rooster. Not an independent contractor. I'm not really up on employment law, I said. It's not fair, you know. I bust my ass all day and half the night delivering people and food just to pay a fifth of the rent. A grown man shouldn't have 4 roommates, even in the mission. No argument from me. I began setting out containers. Egg drop soup, kung pao chicken with mixed vegetables. If you want to make a little extra, I could probably get you an appointment with Pol Pot next week. Dude, Tom frowned. My grandfather was imprisoned by the Khmer Rouge. Not cool. I'm sorry, Ty. Really, they're aliens. They don't understand. You should. His phone beeped with an incoming text. He yanked it out of his cargo shorts and read the message. I gotta run. He left, typing furiously. I went back to my soup, mulling over his comment. I'd been so focused on providing legal and ethical services to the Schadenfreuders, helping my old clients at the same time, but maybe I hadn't really thought about the moral dimension. Ava and Pole walked in without knocking, as usual. I hope you're not billing us for your dinner break, said Pole. With a sigh, I set aside the soup bowl. I wouldn't have to work during my meals if we parceled things out better. This is all about quality, not efficiency, she said. It is paramount that you handle the tastings for my crew. There's no reason I can't hire another paralegal, I said, grabbing a piece of chicken with my chopsticks. We have already permitted you to delegate transactional infrastructure so you can be present during all tastings. They are unsatisfactory when you are absent. I'm pleased you like my work, but I can't keep up this pace. Seriously, I sniffed loudly. The kung pao is really opening up my sinuses. I'm barely sleeping. I can't remember the last time I ate Sunday dinner with my mother. I wiped my nose on a napkin. Irrelevant. You are the best conduit, therefore you must prioritize us. Paul said, as a people, you excel at complaining. The proper term is kvetch. Indeed, it reflects a core cultural value of woe. Your kvetch, as you say, has particular notes of unhappiness that makes your tastings far superior. Ava squeaked at Pole, who left the room. If you need that much suffering, I said, why not go to a war zone? We've got plenty of those. Such mass events are fit only for common Schadenfreuders, she replied. We first contact specialists have discriminating palates. Besides, we are tasked for finding the finest victuals for the ambassador. She added an awkward wink. The other crew will be so envious. Pole returned with an aluminum briefcase and flipped open the latches, revealing neat bundles of 50s and 100s. We wish to manacle your services and are willing to provide you additional compensation. Lock you in, corrected Pole. An exclusive arrangement. I'll need to drop a new contract, I said. Don't take too long, said Ava. I will not be disappointed. After they left, I took myself to the 21 Club for a much-needed drink. The bar was nearly full, and Sally was working alongside Mahesh, who was hooking up a fresh keg of Rolling Rock. Look what the cat dragged in, said Sally. Mineral water? I slipped onto a bar stool. I need something stronger tonight. Maybe a bourbon? She pursed her lips. You got it. She brought over a heavy glass full of ice and smoky liquid. Bad day at the office. Yes and no. I sipped at my drink and coughed. It had been a while. Too strong, she said. Perfect! She winked and went to fill another customer's order. When she came back, she set down a fresh coaster and a Diet Coke for herself. I recounted my recent meeting with the Schadenfreuders and their annoying demands. I don't know, said Sally. I could put up with a lot for a suitcase full of cash. It's nice not to worry about the bills, I admitted, but I'm not helping people. Not really. Your clients get paid, don't they? I nodded. Not enough to make any real difference. They'll spend whatever the Schadenfreuders give them, and then next month's bills come along. What then? Sally toyed with her straw. Have you thought about a monthly subscription service? I tried that. The little stinkers insist on unique tastings, I said. We prefer fresh misery every day. I finished my drink. I'm like the sommelier of suffering. Huh. Refill? Why the hell not? I can afford it. My Uber dropped me off at the armory, and the duty sentry waited stoically while I fumbled for my ID. Inside the office, I encountered a pile of Schadenfreuders, purring and farting. The smell reminded me of a pulp mill at low tide. One of the aliens opened its ears, its eyes, black and gold flecks. Advocate? Oh, there you are. Oh, hi, Paul. You've been busy. Indeed. He brushed dirt from his fur. All of us, Suarto, Vladimir, Nikki, we decided a late night snack was in order. But you weren't here. So rude. We had to sneak out and find some tasty homeless people by ourselves. He groaned. Oh. Nikki offered extra large bottles of inexpensive alcohol to goad them on. So many stories of addiction and loss. I think I ate too much. Wait, what do you mean sneak out? What about the guards? Paul farted loudly. We came here in a spaceship. You think we couldn't bypass your primitive sensors and alarm systems? Whatever. Look, it's late. I've got a busy day tomorrow. I nudged an alien with my shoe. So if you don't mind, I'd like to go to bed. He rolled the other Schadenfreuders in the hall. I kicked off my shoes. Advocate? What is it, Paul? She's prevaricating, you know. Who? Eva Perron. I found a blanket. Occupational hazard for a politician. Get the light, will you? She has promised the crew that you will work for her. I am working for her. I reached for the light. Paul intercepted me. No, I found out. I found you. This is my contract, my operation. If you sign her contract, our leaders will reward her, put her in charge. He shook my arm. This isn't fair. I freed my arm and sat back. Okay, you don't want me to sign. He stepped closer. I want you to sign with me. Right. My bourbon fog brain finally caught up. I want a better offer, I said, automatically. With certain guarantees from my clients. I see we understand each other now, advocate. He grinned his toothless grin. With this transaction, I will rise above her in rank, and her disappointment will be a daily feast. Okay, I said. I'll have something for you first thing tomorrow, but not too early, seriously. Paul squeaked a reply, switched off the light, and shuffled away. I drifted off to thoughts of money, briefcases full of it. In my dreams, though, all I heard were my clients' voices demanding real justice, not cash. I slept until 8, stumbled into the shower and let the hot water pound my aching head. My body reminded me that I wasn't used to hard liquor, and army cots play hell with your back. With regret, I tailed off, found some clean clothes, and fired up my laptop. I had just printed up my demands when Eva Perron barged into my office. Paul followed her, carrying a large insulated cup. Today is a momentous day for your little planet, advocate, she said. Our ambassador will be here within the hour. Is that coffee? Yes, said Paul, giving it to me. I took a large gulp and decided life could continue. I didn't think you drank this. I don't, said Paul. But based on your condition last night, I figured that such a determined offering would lubricate our negotiations. That's good. What negotiations? Asked Ava. Yeah, about that, I said. Last night, I did some thinking, and I came up with a proposal. I made copies for them. They perused the documents. I don't understand, said Ava. Sorry, it's like a menu. You select compensation from one side and benefits from the other. It's mix and match. You've been eating too much takeout, said Paul. Probably, I said. Let me show you. Base compensation, top rate, $5,000 a day flat. Ridiculous. You might think that, Ava, but at that rate, you only have to provide 2 weeks paid time off, plus weekends and all recognized religious holidays. What if we don't want to pay you that much, Paul said. Which we don't, confirmed Ava. Then I get more vacation. In exchange, you raise the compensation for my clients. It's a balance. I am not amused, advocate. And one more thing. I gave them new pages. These are my clients who need medical treatment, counseling, and assistance with various government agencies. You're going to help me arrange for that. I waited, holding my breath. Finally, Paul said, why should we help them? As I said before, my people are not interested in alleviating the suffering of humans. But I am, I said, and this is non-negotiable. However, since you brought me coffee, I give you first refusal rights at 1/3 the salary point. Congratulations, you get to be the big cheese on earth. I'm the chief negotiator here, said Ava. You will deal with me and no one else. Your crew seems to have other ideas. I tapped my watch. In any event, aren't you inspecting the ambassador, like, soon? Ava rounded on Paul with a furious squeaking. Even without the translator, I had a pretty clear idea of the conversation. Paul's reply was loud and complex, and his fur began to puff up. I rummaged around my desk until I located some aspirin, making a mental note to avoid bourbon for the rest of the decade. I swallowed 4 tablets, closed my eyes, and willed it to do its magic. Eventually, the chipmunk chorus died down. I reluctantly opened my eyes. Ava Perrone stood there with her copy of the papers and a red Sharpie plucked from my desk. I accept this and this, but not this. She crossed out the extra week of vacation. I can live with that. I turned to my laptop, made the changes and printed more copies, handing them to Ava. She scribbled her signature and Paul witnessed it. Now please leave, I said, I'm taking my first sick day. And give my best to the ambassador, will you? I can't wait to tell him about all the good work you'll be doing here. So much suffering removed, and at such reasonable prices. I shut the door in their faces.
Well, that was fun.
Yeah. Both stories. Thank you very much, Karl. Karl Dandenell, everybody. You know, we don't ask our authors to talk to each other to plan programs at all. But these stories tonight were kind of perfectly matched. It's both very smart, very funny. So I want to thank you both, Karl Dandenell, Effie Seiberg, for a really great story hour. And I want to thank all of you for coming back week after week. And thank my co-host, Laura Blackwell, without whom I would not be able to do this. And Sepwa for helping to make this possible. So next week, please come on back because we are very excited to have Sonia Falk and Tara Campbell. It's going to be a great program. Between then and now, take care of yourselves. See you next time, folks.
Yeah.